What? Did you expect a jump scare intros? I have a soft spot for the Alien films, specifically the first two. They were movies that I was not allowed to see as a kid until I got older. They would sit on my dad's shelf in his office along with The Matrix and Gladiator. And they were just movies that my dad was like, they're fine movies, but you're just a little too young. And then when I turned about 16, I started to watch them with my dad, which was really fun. And so I've always had a soft spot for those first two. Alien 3 and 4, Prometheus and Covenant. Prometheus is alright. However, I am happy to say that I think Alien Romulus is great, and I think it stands the test of time with the other two films, the original two films. I think it's really good. I had a great time in the theater with it. First off, aesthetically, it's just so pleasing. It looks so similar to the original Alien, but it's not afraid to have its own flair and a modern sense of coloring, but still keep the sets looking similar to that, because the vibe of what Alien had going on was awesome, and it's fine to interpret it different ways, but I feel the later films just lost touch with what made that first one so cool, and even Aliens so cool. And I think it's interesting that I see a lot of people compare this movie to Alien, which is obviously the case because it takes a huge inspiration from that one and definitely wants to model most of itself after that film. However, I would also argue that Aliens is just as influential on this film, and I personally prefer Aliens. I'm not against horror. I love lots of different horror stuff. I love Resident Evil. I'm a big fan of, Alien, as I said. And I like some horror movies here and there. I'm a sucker for Scream. I think that movie's great. But to be frank, I'm not normally into that genre, or maybe I just have too high standards for that genre. I just find a lot of the movies bad. But that being said, I think Alien Romulus stands really well on its own. Now, I'm not going to get into spoilers until the second half of this review, but this first half we'll sort of talk about, what I like about it in a generalized sense. First off, Kaylee Spaley is fantastic. I hope I'm saying that right. I think it's Spaney, actually. She's fantastic as the quote-unquote new Ellen Ripley, Rain. And her with her brother Andy are an incredible dynamic, and I just loved both of them so much. Both of their performances were fantastic. It was super, super good. And that's not to take away from the rest of the crew. The rest of the crew were fantastic in the movie as well. I really, really loved them. The movie still falls into little pitfalls that a lot of horror movies do, where, you see certain crew members fall into certain archetypes, or you see things coming before they actually happen. But for the most part, Alien Romulus does keep you on your toes and does try to be as original as it can be. It doesn't try to break the formula, but I'd say it bangs its head against it as much as it can. I think the alien looks great. More practical effects in films, please. It looks incredible. The robotic, if you haven't seen the behind-the-scenes footage, I'll try and put some of it into the video. If you haven't seen the behind-the-scenes footage of this movie, even if you don't care about Alien, please go watch it. It's so cool to see them building the animatronics and how they set up all these great shots in the film. It really is truly interesting, and I really loved it. But I think actually that's probably one of my favorite parts of the film, is just how incredible the animatronics are. They feel so real. It's really impressive. The score is also fantastic. I don't know if it just never occurred to me and I need to go rewatch the old Alien and Aliens, but the score never stood out to me as much as it does in Romulus. They definitely tried to use sound design and music to make this movie feel original, and I think that's awesome. It has those aesthetic beats that the Alien films always do, but it's not afraid to add some new cinematic feeling moments that I think make it stand out, almost like a little bit of an art house film at times. Certain shots of, I'll say, the rings of a planet from a certain sequence in the film just look awesome, and it's really, really cool. So definite shout out to that. Now, I've done reviews in the past where I mostly talk about things and I do like a pros and cons list, but I don't know, I'm kind of changing up the channel with the new views and everything, and I don't really want to harp on things that I dislike when it comes to a film. I just kind of want to talk about stuff I like. So I won't get into the negatives too much of this movie, but I will say, if there was one little thing I wish it could have done better, it was that certain sequences I wish had more time to breathe a little bit. I'm all for the fact that I think this movie has a perfect runtime of 2 hours. I don't think it needed to be longer. I don't think it needed to be shorter. But I do think certain scenes could have maybe been moved around, shortened, and other ones extended to fill in certain gaps, I think, because it makes certain parts of it, not make sense, but rather that it comes kind of fast. And I would have loved to have let that third act breathe a little more because it's just so good. The third act of this movie is really the icing on top. The first 2 acts, I would say, are more reminiscent of Alien. And then the final act feels like Alien, but it definitely takes a lot more cues from Aliens. And I think that's really awesome. But that's the most I can say without getting into spoilers. So big time spoiler warning. If you don't want to get spoiled for Alien Romulus, leave now. I am going to spoil the movie. All right, spoiler territory. So first up, I'm going to talk about the third act. I'll jump around kind of to different things that I like, but the first act is awesome. Or the third act is awesome. The third act is incredibly strong. That sequence where they're in zero gravity and they're floating through like the acid as she's using the auto fire to kill the aliens, and then they go up the elevator and all of that. Incredible. Awesome. And then immediately followed up by that absolute nightmare of a humanoid creature thingy at the end, and her running from it on the ship, and then eventually kicking it out the cargo bay. And it has that shot of all of Rain getting sucked out into the airlock, and all of the sand kind of following after her, and it shows an alien kind of falling into like the rings, and then of course it comes back for one more jump scare. But still, that entire sequence of her kind of like floating in the spacesuit attached to the cable above the rings of the planet is just it just looks so cool, and it's such a great backdrop for that sequence. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, and I think it was really, really cool. I know some people have complained about the fact that the movie's at its strongest when it tries to be like Alien, but I do think we can't deny that it taking risks and trying to do these big cinematic moments isn't a bad thing. Like, one of my favorite shots of the film is before any of the violence and gore even starts. It's when they're rising up off of the planet, and you get this beautiful shot of Rain and the crew seeing the sun for the first time because they've lived on a planet where there's no sunlight, and I think that's really awesome. Now, back to what I think was amazing. I really think the whole cast does a great job, but Rain and Andy's dynamic is so awesome. Andy's I need to look up the actor's name. I'm going to put it on screen right here because I just can't remember and it's killing me. But he does an incredible job as Andy. And playing a robot that's malfunctioning, almost like it's a person who has like autism or something like that. And using that as an allegory for him being mistreated and feeling different, but still loving his sister and all of those things. It's just such a beautiful dynamic. And watching Rain care for Andy throughout the film, it really just, hit home for me, especially as somebody who's had people like that in his life and has really cared for them through friends and family. I thought it was a really great dynamic, and it really meant a lot to me personally when I was seeing that. Having seen dynamics like that in real life, it was really awesome to see them reflected so well in cinema. So, great job between those two. Loved it. Loved Andy's character arc, loved Rain's character arc, loved their complicated relationship. Overall, fantastic. Totally loved it. As for the kills and the gore, for those who don't, care about the movie and are just into the spoiler section, I do think the movie's pretty graphic. I don't think it's as graphic as people say. Like, I saw people online being like, dude, you're gonna puke in the theater when you see this movie. It's not that bad. But it is, there's one scene, that scene at the end when the organism gives birth out of the one girl from the crew. I think her name's Mia. I can't remember, but when it like crawled out of her, I was like, oh my goodness, oh what? My whole theater, when the organism first shows up on the ship at the end, and it's kind of crouching creepily in the hallway, and you see the fog around it, so you can't get a good look of it, but you can tell it's almost like a xenomorph mixed with a human, but it still has those like xenomorph, like the black eyes, almost like the xenomorph skin is. My whole theater gasped in unison during that scene. It was a packed show for me, and having a whole audience respond emotionally like that, it made me know how good of a job they did on that. So that was really awesome. I loved the creature design, and obviously the xenomorphs, like I said during the non-spoiler section, they look great. Their animatronics are great. The creature is not animatronic, which I think is really cool. It's played by a basketball player's name I won't even begin to pronounce, but he does a great job as the creature. It's really menacing and really creepy. And it's refreshing a little bit, Obviously, its face and look is a reference to Prometheus with the engineers, sort of like we reverse engineer the engineers with the xenomorphs. It's kind of interesting plot thread. But yeah, I think that's all I really have to say. Oh, I'll also mention the X-ray chestburster thing is really cool. That was a neat way to take, this iconic sequence. I mean, heck, Aliens and the Library of Congress. The iconic sequence of it, like, bursting out of someone, and using it as a new way to look at it by showing them seeing it happening, trying to come up with a way to save her, and you're seeing it slowly burst out. Again, the sound design, the bone cracking in my theater in IMAX, just that kind of full sound of it, it was so anxiety inducing. Again, one little complaint that I couldn't get into too much in the how would I say it, in the non-spoiler section, was some of the kills and some of the like death sequences of characters. I wish some of them would have been longer, particularly Bjorn's scene where he dies. I felt like for a guy who survived all those facehuggers attacking him and being pretty smart early on in the film, it made me kind of mad when he died because he just stood still and looked into the weird alien sack thing and then got stabbed and then the acid fell on him. I kind of was like really disappointed by that because I was like, dude, this guy, even though he was a total jackass throughout the whole movie, and I did want to see him die, he was the most annoying of the crew, which is intentional. I don't know. I was just kind of like, bro, how did you have the smarts to avoid things, know something was in the water earlier, and then you know the monster's in that thing, and you're like, what's in that? And then you get killed. I was a little disappointed by that, and I feel like some of it was the movie trying to hit all of its beats, and I wish it would have let scenes like that maybe extend a little more so it felt more authentic. And then I've also given some of the early stuff, or the later stuff in the third act, more room to breathe as well because it was so well choreographed. I would have loved to have seen more of it. There's some early on scenes when they're walking around the ship that I think could have been shortened just a bit. If you took like 30 seconds off of like a bunch of set of scenes or a bunch of shots and like compress some stuff, I think it could have been perfect. But again, I am like big time nitpicking. This movie is great. And really, I really do recommend it. And that's sort of where I'll wrap this review up, is by saying that I think it's truly a fantastic movie. And I think it's cool now that, you know, there's a ton of Alien films out there. There's Alien vs. Predator, there's the comics, there's the games. It's really awesome to have another movie that I think is worthy of rewatch with the original two. And the fact that it canonically falls in between the original two, almost in a Rogue One kind of way, is really cool. So I'm super excited to check that out. Anyway, that's kind of where I'm going to wrap this up. If you guys liked Alien Romulus in the comments, let me know. If you had any gripes with it, let me know. Overall, I loved the movie, and I'm excited to see it again. I really want to see it again, so I may go back and check it out again with some friends. So, thank you all so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day and your week, and I'll see you in the climb this Friday. Take care, everyone. Rock on in the free world, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.